Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, dear sisters and families. I hope and pray that you are all well and keeping safe under the circumstances. Alhamdulillah, today is our second session in our beautiful journey through Quran, inshallah, throughout the blessed month of Ramadan. Yesterday, as I hope that most of you were there, yes, because I can see some very familiar names from yesterday. We had Sister Nasreen giving us induction, and then our lovely summer started with Surah Al-Fatiha, and she's done quite a lot of Baqarah, and I think today she will be starting from ayah number 142. Now, before I hand it over to Summer, I note down a couple of things for myself as my reminder. What Sister Nasreen was reminding us an ayah from Surah Al-Anbiya. وَلَقَدْ أَنزَلْنَا إِلَيْكُمْ كِتَابًا فِيهِ ذِكْرُكُمْ أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. We have you a book that mentioned you. Do you not understand? So that leads to our theme question throughout the blessed month. Where am I in this Quran? Where do I stand when it comes to Quran? What relation do I have with the Quran? I don't know about you guys, but I'm not satisfied. Whatever relation I have, I want and I need to have more. So that's what I, jot down for myself. And another verse that Nasreen mentioned in Surah Qamar, and in Surah Qamar it has been repeated. وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ بِذِكْرِ فَهَلْ مِن مُدَّكِرٍ. And we have certainly made the Quran easy for your remembrance. So is there any who will remember? I think this ayah should be printed and should be stuck on our kitchen, fridge, wherever we normally say our salah. It reminds us that it is us who block our own self by approaching Quran and making Quran our closest dear friend and making Quran our daily diary. So that's what our aim is this month, that at the end of this month, we establish a better relation probably than what we have with the Quran, inshallah. I don't think you want to listen to me further. Summer, if you use your mic so that we know your mic is working. Assalamu alaikum.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, dear. So I will let you start now, inshallah.
Thank you. Let me just get my clock so we don't go beyond. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, everybody, and welcome back to the summary of the entire Quran. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني ويفقهوا قولي ربي زدني علما ربي زدني علما ربي زدني علما. Ya Allah, make the Quran a source of guidance for us as we embark on this journey. Ameen. So yesterday we spoke in great detail about the Jews, the fall of the Jews. We spoke about the introduction to the Quran. We spoke about Surah Fatiha. Our ayah of the day yesterday was Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim, this call for guidance when we start the Quran. And inshallah today we are going to be continuing with the surah with that theme. So let's recap on our 4 areas of Surah Baqarah. So we've already, let's get my pointer up, we have already done the introduction, we've done the fall of the Jews. Now, today, inshallah, we will finish Surah Baqarah today, and it is one of the most interesting parts of the surah because now we kind of delve into Muslim leadership and law. And there's going to be a lot of fascinating things, but I do want to emphasize that due to time restrictions and primarily due to time restrictions, we are not going to delve into too much detail about the nitty-gritty and the fiqh of the laws that we will be talking about. Those are for the fuqaha, those are for scholars of the Quran who can really delve into these issues. And I recommend that, inshallah, when we explore these areas of the Quran, you go home and you do further research on these aspects. If we could be here and we could be writing volumes and volumes of books, and there have been volumes and volumes of books about some of these laws. The purpose here, I would like to remind you, is that we are only just giving you an insight as to what the Quran is telling us. So please do not be disheartened if we don't delve into a specific area, into a specific law. Inshallah, that is for you to go and explore on you individually. So let's begin then. So let's start with this third part of Surah Baqarah. And in a nutshell, Allah is commanding us to enter the fold of Islam and to fulfill the obligation of testifying against the Bani Israel and by obeying all the commandments. Now, there's a lot there, and we're going to be separating it bit by bit, inshallah. Essentially, we've been asked to submit ourselves to Allah, not to commit the same mistakes as Bani Israel, and obey the commandments that He has given to the Prophet ﷺ, and therefore to us. So, let's have a look at the first set of ayahs that we are going to be looking at, 142 to 150. Now, there's a lot of things here, and I'm going to present them to you here so that you can have a read through on your own as well. So I want to talk about this. It's a very interesting event happened upon these revelations being upon this set of ayahs, and that was the change of the qibla. Okay, so you can see in the section with ayah 143 to 149, the Muslims are told to face the Kaaba as a new qibla. Now, previously it used to be Masjid al-Aqsa, and it was during the Prophet ﷺ salah where this revelation came, and he was asked to turn towards Kaaba. Now, we must first establish and we must recognize that before even Masjid al-Aqsa, the Kaaba used to be and was the first place of worship. Okay, so it reverted back to the Kaaba. That's more of a geographical reasoning. Now, the significance of this, however, is that Allah here is now changing the leadership from Bani Israel, who at the time were considered the chosen nation, and now Allah is bringing that shift to us. Okay, and He is declaring us as the moderate nation. Okay, now what does a moderate nation mean? What does that entail? What responsibility? What does that mean for us? Well, our nation is moderate because our actions and rituals are balanced. Okay, we are not too relaxed. We are not too extreme. We are a moderate nation. This title is previously given to the Bani Israel. However, they failed, as we learned yesterday, and now this is active. And what we need to realize is that this is a shift of responsibility. In these ayahs, Allah is explicitly telling us our responsibility now. And this is a very big responsibility. And this is not only a responsibility as leadership as a whole. Remember, yesterday we spoke about leadership on a communal level and within our homes and individually. So this is Allah is telling us that this is your responsibility now. And frankly speaking, when I read this, so when I was learning about this ayah, that got me thinking. So this is not just a responsibility that you have at work or at school or as a responsibility in the household. This is a divine responsibility. And therefore, we are going to use this as a means to come closer to Allah. Okay? And in Ayah 152, Allah says, remember me and I will remember you. Okay? So the key of success and how do we attain the success in this responsibility is by using Allah's blessings in a lawful way. We use this leadership, this responsibility in a way which pleases Him. And this is a promise. Allah tells us, if you use the resources I have given you in the right way, and you remember me, and you use my blessings for the correct way, I will remember you. Now, moving on here in Ayah 153 to 167, Allah here has mentioned something very profound. And He has said, and in Ayah 155, and we will surely test you with something of fear and hunger and lots of wealth and lives and fruit, but give good tidings to the patient. How can you relate to this ayah? Think about what's happening nowadays. Are we not being tested with fear? We don't know what this COVID-19 really is. Aren't we being tested with hunger for some of us who cannot find, or especially initially when food was being, people were stockpiling? A loss of wealth. Aren't businesses slowly beginning to realize that they're going to a loss rather than a profit? Lives. Look at the death rates. And fruit, meaning abundance. To some people, they may not be receiving the abundance they usually have. This ayah is describing our situation to the T. This ayah is encapsulating exactly what we are going through. But how does Allah reassure us? He says, give good tidings to the patient. So what can we learn here? Those who are patient and pray will succeed. Allah here is telling us that we can make mistakes. This doesn't necessarily specifically have to obviously do with our situation, but just generally, Allah here is saying that, sometimes we are going to be tested, not with all of these things at once, one by one. And it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to do something incorrect out of ignorance. But do we turn to Allah, or do we continue in our own way? Do we repent, or do we become like Bani Israel, who consistently kept making mistakes and consistently, purposely did wrong, eventually leading to their own demise and the sealing of their hearts? This is a point where we need to reflect. So when we talk about where do we see ourselves in the Quran, is this where you see yourself perhaps? That this, when we are faced with a trial, do we turn to Allah? Do we come back to the Quran, or do we continue in making our mistakes and not learning from them? Now, moving onwards, and I'm going to come, it says on Ayah 158, the commandments for Hajj and Umrah. I will come to that, not yet. There's going to be a lot more in depth about Hajj and Umrah, inshallah. We will be talking about it in a few slides' time. And similarly with this ayah here as well, with the belief in Tawheed, we'll talk about that in just a second as well. Now, from ayah 168, we need to remember that Surah Baqarah is a Madani surah. So there's going to be a lot of rules and regulations that we're going to be talking about. And the first of these rules that Allah talks about is food. So Allah talks about what is allowed for us to eat. And essentially, what the default is, everything is halal unless otherwise stated. So Allah here is telling us that we can eat everything which is good and clean. And then Allah tells us what we cannot eat. And these are the 4 things which we cannot. Okay, so like I said, halal until proven otherwise. So we can't have dead animals. Dead animals meaning animals like from roadkill or animals that have already been attacked by another predator. We can't have blood, swine, pork, an animal which has not been slaughtered in the correct Islamic way. Okay? And subhanAllah, what's interesting is that Allah always has a plan for extenuating circumstances. Okay? And you cannot, or if you are in a dire situation where you are about to die of hunger, you are allowed to eat from the unlawful enough to keep us alive. Okay? So that is the general ruling, and inshallah we'll actually see that Allah's ruling is very fair. He's not going to tell us things which are unlawful and that is the be-all end-all. There is always room for us to, there is always a contingency plan. There is always an extenuating circumstance that Allah talks about. So that's the first of the many rules that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala discusses with us. Now, the next ayah is an ayah about righteousness. I want to spend a bit longer on this ayah because it's a very, very important ayah here. And this ayah is nicknamed Ayatul Bir. Okay? So, righteousness. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about righteousness a lot. He talks about who is righteous, what we need to do to be righteous. But inshallah, maybe the way I'll explain righteousness might be slightly more practical and accessible. So I'm going to try and condense this ayah into a concise definition of what it means to be a righteous person. Righteousness is of four. Okay, there are four categories or four definitions. The first is that we believe there is only one true God. The second is we believe that there are angels writing down our actions and we will be judged according to those actions. The third are those who fulfill promises. And the fourth are those who are patient in hardships. And those who are patient in hardships. Okay? And in a nutshell, what this is telling us is that if we do these actions, then this belief will prompt us to do our ritual actions. What that means is that the salah, for example, or the psalm will not instill righteousness. It is the other way round. It is this belief, these four beliefs, that prompt us to do actions such as salah and fasting. We need to be very much aware of when we are fasting, when we are making salah, when we are doing right good deeds. We need to be aware that the angels on our shoulders are writing these actions down and we will be judged according to them. Okay? And if we do these actions like salah and fasting without belief, then they are just actions which mean nothing in the eyes of Allah, although to someone else who is watching you, they may consider you very righteous. So righteousness is not defined by the third person looking at you saying, yes, this person is a very righteous woman or man. Righteousness is what is in the heart, and you yourself can evaluate whether or not you fit into these categories. Now, what's interesting is that when we are put into tests and hardships, these four beliefs, they vanish. And this is reality, they do. When we are put into a situation that we're not comfortable with, are we patient? Do we believe that the angels are writing our actions? Do we believe that the angels are recording our reactions? No. More often than not, we don't. So righteousness feeds into the fact that when we are tested, these beliefs or these elements of righteousness should still hold. They should be constant throughout, in times of hardship and in times of ease. So this is a very important ayah in this surah. This is why, of course, it has been given a nickname of Ayatul Bir. So if you are writing notes, then I hope you've written those four qualities of righteousness. Now, the next set of commandments, and like I was saying earlier, Allah talks a lot about commandments in this part of the surah. And there's five that you can see on the screen. I am going to talk about, briefly I'm going to be talking about 2 or 3 at most. Inshallah, you can go away and do your own research on them. So the first one that I want to elaborate on is the Ayah 178 to 179, where Allah talks about blood money. So in Islam, blood money and murder, the general rule is an eye for an eye, a man for a man, a woman for a woman, etc. And this is so fascinating because Allah doesn't just talk about murders, He talks about accidental murders as well, because He acknowledges that sometimes we make mistakes. And in the case of accidental murders, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prefers blood money. So He does not prefer eye for an eye, a man for a man, or a woman for a woman. Okay? He prefers that blood money is exchanged. However, in intentional murders, Allah is saying that the preference is an eye for an eye. Okay? Now we need to understand something, and I'll elaborate on this later as well, is that sometimes the things that Allah tells us in the Quran and the laws He has sent, we need to accept and we need to believe them. And we need to follow the command, because this is part of Allah's hikmah. And this is Allah's wisdom. So we cannot question them. To an extent, we cannot question them in the sense where we are doubting Allah's wisdom. But if you have questions concerning the law itself, then yes, of course, go and do your research about them, ask the relevant people. The other thing I want to stress about blood money here is that this is not something that an individual can take ownership of. You can't suddenly say that so-and-so has killed my relative. I'm going to take matters in my own hand and I'm going to go and fulfill Allah's commandment of an eye for an eye. That is not what this ayah is saying. This ayah can only be implemented through government law and regulation, through witnesses, through proper legal legislation. Okay? So this is not an individual choice. The next thing I want to talk about is fasting. Fasting, this is the only ayahs in the Quran that Allah talks about fasting. Just a few things about fasting, inshallah. I don't want to talk, we can listen to lectures and lectures about fasting, inshallah. You can do that later. So in the Quran, in these ayahs, Allah talks about who should fast. They are the adults, the sane and the healthy. And those who are exempt from fasting, they are the travelers and those who are ill. And Allah also talks about, again, we're talking about extenuating circumstances, those with people who are terminally ill or who cannot fast at all due to a condition, so on and so forth, but they need to pay something called a fidya. And a fidya is the money it's the money that you pay to feed one needy person per day. Okay? And this amount changes per country, because obviously the standard of living per country is different. So if you fall into a category where you are, terminally ill, and may Allah give you shifa, then please go to relevant websites, or a lot of charities mention this as well, about what the fidya rate is. So for example, per day, it might be £5, for example. I'm not saying it is, I'm just giving you an example. And there's another group of people that Allah talks about in fasting, and this is kafara. And these are people who deliberately break their fast knowingly, intentionally. Okay? And the severity of this sin is such that the consequence is that one must fast 60 fasts consecutively. Or each day you need to feed 60 needy people. So let's say, for example, that for each person it is £5. So per day, that is £300 for every fast deliberately broken. Okay? And the reason why this is so severe is so that people don't take this lightly. Breaking your fast intentionally is a very, very serious matter, therefore having very serious consequences. Now, at the end of the ayah on fasting, and we are actually going to see this in the ayahs about Hajj as well. Allah talks about taqwa, okay? And taqwa is mentioned in two places, fasting and Hajj. And fasting and Hajj, you could argue, are the institutions. They are the training grounds for taqwa, okay? And Allah elaborates on Hajj and fasting in this surah for that reason, okay? And that's why Allah talks about taqwa a lot as well. So let's elaborate onto this idea of these taqwa institutions, these taqwa training grounds. Firstly, what is taqwa? Taqwa is God consciousness. It is staying away from wrong deeds. And again, we can delve into taqwa. I'm not going to do that right now. We'll be here for another 2 hours if I did that. Now, the two institutions for taqwa are fasting and hajj. Fasting is the spiritual training ground to attain taqwa, and hajj is the physical and financial training ground for taqwa. Okay? And they both combined teach us how to be humble. And if we are to relate this to the overall theme of leadership, the humble nature that we will achieve from attaining taqwa is what will raise us as the moderate nation. Now, whenever you go to an institution, you are not going to be put under tests. You are not going to be put under the training ground without an exam. So what is the exam for the taqwa institution? The tests that we will be faced with are that fasting and hajj are areas where many people are boastful. And this is where shaitan will try to make us fail in the institution of taqwa. That shaitan will try and whisper into our ears that, wow, this person donated so much during Ramadan, and wow, this person had a 5-star hajj. And we become boastful, we lose this humility. Whereas the purpose of the institution, the purpose of the training ground is to gain and attain that humility and the God consciousness. Now, the next set of ayahs, Allah talks about jihad. Now, this is, I really want to emphasize on this, because jihad nowadays has been misinterpreted and there have been a lot of misconceptions. Inshallah, I would like to try and clear those misconceptions to the best of my ability. Now, in these ayahs, in ayah 190 to 194, Allah gives us guidelines of fighting. Now, sisters and families, this is exclusive to war only. And not any war, this is war between Muslims and non-Muslims and non-believers, okay? Exclusive to the war setting. This is not your guidelines at home. This is not taking law and leadership into our own hands. This is by authority, and this is in a situation where we are doing we are going into physical war. So what is Allah telling us about fighting in the way of Allah? In 2 years after Hijrah, the same year that Ramadan, the laws for Ramadan were revealed, Allah also gave permission to fight. Okay, because in Makkah for the first 13 years they were not. That was more of a period where the religion of Islam was being established. Now that the Muslims have had the ruling where they can go and establish Islam in other areas. Okay, so Allah has given them the permission to fight in the way of Allah. Now, what I would like to emphasize here, and the key point of these ayahs, is that, and I want everyone to be listening carefully, inshallah. If your opponent strikes, only then you strike back at an equal amount. That is what Allah is saying. Allah is not saying take matters in your own hands and go and fight. No, Allah is saying if your opponent strikes you, then you strike back at an equal amount. What do I mean by equal amount? Do not exaggerate in the retaliation. I want you to think about that for a second, and I want you to think about how that relates to our world today. These ayahs are applicable only if fight is forced on you. And then Allah says, and this ayah is misused a lot. The ayah says, ayah 191 says, kill them wherever you overtake them and expel them from wherever they have expelled you. This ayah is that if fight is forced upon you. So please, inshallah, when we are reading media outlets, when we are looking into wider society, this is the context of this ayah. Only when the opponent strikes you as a Muslim nation, then you physically go. Only if it is forced upon you. Up until then, you maintain patience. You maintain your outreach. You maintain in your communities. And Allah furthermore then discusses the purpose of fighting. Okay, and the purpose of fighting is to prevent the spread of corruption. And again, these are ayahs that are set or are given by government authority and legislation and law. So you cannot, or none of us can get up and say, I am going to go and do jihad. No, these are orders from the commander, from the government, from the Muslim army chief, general, whoever you want to refer to. Okay? We cannot do this individually. And then Allah talks about when you cannot fight. And Allah gives us 4 months in the Islamic year where fighting is prohibited. And they are Dhul Qa'dah, Dhul Hijjah, Muharram, and Rajab. Okay, so these are three consecutive months. And then Rajab, Allah says fighting is prohibited because these are 4 sacred months. Okay, so inshallah, I hope that clarifies the context behind the idea of jihad. Now, Allah in these set of ayahs also talks about charity. We'll talk about charity in a few slides time. I'm not going to elaborate on that in just a minute. The next set of ayahs I want to talk about are the ayahs about Hajj and Umrah. And what Allah tells us about the guidelines of Hajj and Umrah are that the one who should perform Hajj is the adult, the one who can financially bear the costs of travel and accommodation, but also the one who can leave some financial assets at home, enough for their family. So this doesn't mean that you spend everything that you have on Hajj and you've got nothing left for your family at home. The command is that we have enough to go on Hajj and also enough for your family at home as well. So we spoke about Hajj and fasting being a training ground or an institution for taqwa. And I want you to cast your mind, and I want to make a link between what we have learned so far and the 5 pillars of Islam. In this set of ayahs, in this third part of Surah Baqarah, you'll find that Allah talks extensively about, Allah will talk extensively about salah. He will talk about fasting, which we've already covered. We will talk about zakah and charity, and also Hajj, which I'm going to elaborate on now. So you could argue that this portion of Surah Baqarah really focuses on the 5 pillars of Islam: Shahada, Salah, Zakah, Sawm, and Hajj. And I want to relate this to our overall theme of leadership. Shahada, we are submitting our choice. Salah, we are submitting our bodily power. We are submitting physically to Allah. In Zakah, we are submitting financially. In Sawm, we are submitting our nafs and our desires. And in Hajj, we are collectively submitting. These are also the qualities to make a leader. A leader needs to give up their own choice for the betterment of society. A leader needs to submit their power, their own power, their bodily power, their physical bodily power, for the betterment of their society. A leader also needs to submit financially. They will have to make financial sacrifices. A leader needs to put their desires to one side and focus on the desires of their community. And a leader needs to collectively unite the Muslim Ummah. These ayahs are implicitly telling us what a leader, the qualities a leader should have through the 5 pillars of Islam. So this is a point of our reflection. As a leader within our household or within our communities, are we adhering to the 5 pillars of Islam? Through our actions? Follow something that we need to, something to take home for today, something to think about. After this extensive talk, Allah speaks about in Ayah 201, Allah extensively, actually in this ayah, He gives us the dua, رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. And this dua is asking Allah teaches us dua and is asking Allah for us to give the goodness of this dunya and then the goodness of the akhirah, which is interesting. Because wouldn't you usually think that maybe Allah should tell us to ask for goodness of the akhirah and then the dunya? Isn't that really what's been going on? But look here, Allah is telling us about the goodness of this dunya and then the goodness of this akhirah. So after these very heavy, very, you could argue very, very detailed ayahs of jihad and hajj, Allah teaches us this dua. And the dua asks for dunya first and then the akhirah. So what this means is that we need to use the resources and goodness from this dunya and use it for Allah. So Allah and Islam does not stop us from using materials from this world. We need the benefits and the blessings from this dunya to help us. We cannot neglect them completely. But we must not be greedy. Because if the worldly blessings make us greedy, then it is no longer a blessing and it will no longer benefit us in the akhirah. And this is a dua that we should try and memorize. If you don't, رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. Now, the next set of commandments Allah is telling us, He is inviting us again. He has evicted Bani Israel from the status of a moderate nation. And Allah is now explicitly telling us to enter Islam wholeheartedly. What does this mean? This means to try to do our best to do that which Allah loves. For example, if you're a child, and obviously all children, alhamdulillah, love their parents, what does a child do first in order to please them? A child will do anything to please their parents, right? If they know that the parents like breakfast in bed, a child will get up and make breakfast in bed. So similarly here, we should try and do that which Allah loves to earn the love of Allah the same way the parents will love us more when we do things that they love. This also means to enter into Islam completely also means that I am trying my best. And yes, I slip and make mistakes, but when I do, I remember Allah and ask for His forgiveness. We admit that we can't do something. Instead of being like Bani Israel, who were explicitly picking and choosing what they liked and what they did not like. There are some things in the Quran which we may like or which we may not like as well. But we must admit that I admit to the word of Allah and I cannot do this, but I will try. Because we are not aiming for perfection. We're not aiming to understand and implement every single thing in the Quran. That's not the aim. The aim is to admit that we can't do something and to return to Allah when you slip and make mistakes. So this is Allah explicitly telling us, come into Islam completely and accept this responsibility as a moderate nation. It's almost like Allah is giving us knighthood. Now, this section now, from here until about the end of the surah, towards the end of the surah, we've talked about certain commandments, but this is where the laws are just one after the other, one after the other, and one after the other. And before I begin on these commandments, I want to discuss the purpose of Sharia. This is the second thing that a lot of people misinterpret a lot. So the first thing people misinterpret is jihad, and the second thing they misinterpret is Sharia. Okay, and the purpose of Sharia is of 5. They are the preservation of life. Allah has including these commandments for 5 reasons. First is the preservation of life, wealth, lineage, intellect, and religion. And those of us who are students of law, and even if you're not students of law, I would really recommend that you go away and do a module or a seminar on this, on Sharia law, so that you are able to then discuss the purpose of Sharia law with those who have misconceptions about it. The other thing I want to tell you about these commandments is that there are some orders that come from Allah and we don't have the capacity to understand them. And we question it. Question it as in we ask why. It's okay to ask why. However, we should not doubt them. When we read the orders of Allah, what our mind frame should be that we admit it is His speech and we do not know the logic behind it because it is the hikmah of Allah. This goes for the laws that we cannot comprehend. So, in the next slide, here we have it here, there are a number of commandments. Allah starts off by talking about social commandments. And in a nutshell, I'm going to summarize the main theme of all these social commandments. And the emphasis here is on the family unit. And most of the laws that are described here are about the rules of the rights of marriage, conflict resolution, children, including fostering, divorce, iddah, waiting period for the divorced and the widow. Now, that's all I'm going to talk about with the social commandments, inshallah. Let's move on to the next part. Now Allah is talking to us, but He's coming back to this idea of jihad. But I'm going to explain to you Islam between the family unit and jihad. But before I do that, I wanted to describe to you the story of a jihad or a struggle that Bani Israel went under the leadership of a man named Talut, okay? So if you remember yesterday, we were talking about how the Bani Israel were resorting to magic to break family units, right? And they stooped very low because they were not grateful, so on and so forth, and they resulted in, they wanted to use magic to break up family. Now, Bani Israel were given an order to fight a group of people who oppressed them. Okay, so this is another incident, and I'm telling you a story here. And in order to fight these people, they demanded a leader. They wanted a leader to lead them into this war. And so Allah appointed a man named Talut who was given knowledge. Okay, so Talut was allocated to the leader. And what do you think Bani Israel did? Being the type of people they were, they questioned his authority, as their impression of a leader was such that someone who had wealth. So they were saying, we don't want to believe in him. He doesn't have much wealth. Why should he be our leader? So he started questioning the leaders that Allah sent. And Bani Israel became lazy and made excuses. Eventually, the very few remaining believers did go to war under Talut's leadership. Okay? And they were successful. These minority people were successful. Now, there are two purposes for this story. The Bani Israel were completely evicted. They were a lost nation, and Allah told us this. Okay? They were a dead nation. Allah described them as a dead nation. They were a dead nation. So a nation that was void with what started off as a family unit, look at how Allah revived them and gave them success. So a dead nation because they were the ones themselves that destroyed the family unit, Allah gave them victory over a nation that was oppressing them. So there's a lesson to be learned here, that Allah's victory does not depend on number and resources. The people who are under the leadership of Talut are very few. And also, leadership is not defined by wealth. Leadership is not defined by wealth. So these are two very, very important key aspects that we need to learn from the story of Jalut and Talut. Okay? Then Allah talks, has this little interlude. He goes to, there's a section in these ayahs that Allah goes completely away from the topic at hand, and this is the Ayatul Kursi, the verse of the throne, and it is the introduction of Allah's attributes. So it's a small interlude, you could say, and it describes Allah's attributes. So why is Ayatul Kursi in the midst of this jihad situation, this jihad? Allah is showing His sovereignty above all nations. He's saying that if I want to revive a community, I can. And He's reminding us that He is in control through His attributes. Now, the next thing that Allah discusses with us here is the etiquette of charity. So He spoke about fasting, we spoke about Hajj, we're now coming to the etiquette of charity. Okay? And sadaqah. Okay? So, the most beautiful thing about charity is that Allah describes charity as a loan to Him, meaning Allah will repay us. And He talks about this in Ayah 45. He says, مَنْ ذَا الَّذِي يُقْرِضُ اللَّهَ قَرْضًا حَسَنًا يُضَاعِفُهُ. Hello? Oh, sorry. I thought I heard something. Sorry. So Allah describes charity as a loan to Him, and Allah will repay us. And so it's mentioned in Ayah 245, مَنْ ذَا الَّذِي يُقْرِضُ اللَّهَ قَرْضًا حَسَنًا فَيُضَاعِفَهُ لَهُ أَضْعَافًا كَثِيرًا. Okay? So this says, who is it that would loan Allah a goodly loan so that He multiply it for him many times over? So He's saying that anything that he has spent in the way of Allah will be given back to him. This is a promise of Allah. And charity does not necessarily have to be about money. Charity can be in the form of money, but it can also be in the form of time, speech, anything to make someone's life better. And Allah has also outlined to us the etiquettes of charity. And the ones that you can see on the screen are those etiquettes. So the recipient should not be reminded of the favor. We shouldn't keep nagging them that, oh yeah, I gave you this, and I gave you this, and I gave you this. You should not be teased. Worthless things should not be picked up for charity. A lot of the time when we give our clothes to charity, we give the things that are maybe not in great condition. It's better to give in private, and charity should not be given for show. And what's interesting here is that immediately in the next ayah, Allah talks about interest and loans. Because charity makes a society empathetic and compassionate, whereas interest makes people selfish and it makes them greedy. So according to the Quran, what is interest according to the Quran? Interest means getting profit on getting profit on given loans. So in other words, money in return of money. So for example, I give some money, but the money I get back is more. What is the consequence of that? It makes the rich richer and the poor poorer. And Allah takes the barakah out of our money with interest. So Allah is telling us the difference between interest and charity here. Okay? And actually Allah spends more time focusing on charity, which benefits us, than interest. He goes into a lot more detail about charity than interest. And Allah also makes a clear distinction between interest and trade. Trade is with sellable items in return for profit, and this is allowed. So anything to do with items, it is allowed. But you could almost argue that the trade between money, so I give money, therefore you give money, that is not allowed. Now, the next ayah is called Ayah, and this ayah is 1 hour, and it is one ayah, and it is the longest ayah in the Quran. It is a whole page long. Okay, and Allah talks at length about loans. Okay, and I'm going to summarize this for you about the etiquettes of loans. Okay, so the first thing Allah tells us is that loans are not distinguished between family and friends. If you take a loan, regardless of who it's from, it is a loan that needs to be repaid. The second thing Allah tells us is that it should be a written agreement between two people. It does not matter if you've taken a loan from your sister or your best friend. This should be a written agreement somewhere. You should write it down. So in this document, what should you write? You should write the amount, the return time of this money, so that the lender and the debtor are both clear and they both know when the money is due, and the witnesses confirming that this money has been lent. SubhanAllah, it's amazing how Allah describes this step by step, and these are things that we do today. We discuss this, we borrow money, we engage in dealings with money, and Allah is very neatly, very concisely discussing and telling us how it should be done. So deeds of loans should be written and witnesses should be present so that there is no conflict between the debtor and the lender. That is the purpose of the witnesses. Allah also goes into detail about who these witnesses to be, who these witnesses are. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but this is in this ayah, and you can have a read, and it's written out very, very clearly, inshallah. So far, we have elaborated and we have spoken about a huge number of commandments. We've gone from social commandments to commandments about fighting in the way of Allah, to commandments about wealth, about loans, about charity, about Hajj, about fasting. And it is very, very detailed. And I would sincerely stress that you go away and you do your research about these things, because the Quran couldn't be more clear about these ayahs. And so where does leadership come into this very detailed part of Surah Baqarah? The first thing is that we realize our position as the leader of mankind. In order to be a leader, these are the things that we should try to implement in order to enter into the fold of Islam completely. We should be the true example, not like Bani Israel. We should enter the fold of Islam completely. We should follow sincerely to the commands of the last and final divine law. So these are these commandments. And we should perform the duty of witness over mankind. This is similar to the performing the duty as the moderate nation. Now, let's come to the last two ayahs of Surah Baqarah, which is our conclusion. Okay, now Allah, just to give you a bit of context about this, these two ayahs were a gift to the Prophet ﷺ during Isra wa Miraj, and this was the ascent to the heavens. So Allah gave him two things when the Prophet ﷺ made the journey to the heavens. The first was the gift of Salah, and the second was these last 2 to 3 ayahs. So we should make it a target this Ramadan, inshallah, that we memorize them, because these are also du'as, and they are also reminders, and they are very important ayahs of the end of Surah Baqarah, and it encapsulates Surah Baqarah and Surah Fatiha very, very neatly. So, verse 284. In this ayah, Allah, we are accepting and submitting that from this surah, we acknowledge that Allah is the owner of the heavens and the earth. We saw from Ayatul Kursi, and Allah made few interludes in this surah where He established His authority. That while we are so engrossed in this dunya and the Sharia law and this law and that commandment, ultimately Allah has the authority. He is the owner of this dunya and the akhirah. And He has the authority to change the leadership. So for those of us who are sitting there in our current climate, in our current situation, thinking, the leaders of today, what is happening? What is the situation of our current of our dunya now? It makes us sad. Yes, it does. But these ayats and this part of Surah Baqarah really reassures us that Allah can change the authority at any given time. Just take the example of Bani Israel. Look at how quickly Allah changed the leadership from Bani Israel to us and gave us that responsibility, our nation that responsibility. And He also gives victory to whom He wills. So in this dunya, it may seem like some of our leaders, some of our nations, some of our countries are getting victory. It may seem like our Muslim ummah is in a state of decline, but remember that Allah gives victory to whom He wills. We learned earlier in the surah that Allah gives wealth and leadership to whomever He pleases. If you remember the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he made the first thing, what did he do? When Allah gave him the leadership, he said, what about my lineage? Or what did Allah say? Don't worry about your lineage. I'll take care of that. So Allah has the authority and He can give victory to whomever He wills. He gave Bani Israel victory after they were proclaimed by Allah Himself that they were a dead nation. And He will check the implementation of this responsibility. How did we implement these ayah? How did we implement these laws and regulations on the Day of Judgment? So dear families, think about the weight of responsibility we have on our shoulders right now. This is a big responsibility, but this is not to scare you and drive you further. Allah reassures us that enter into Islam completely, meaning try our best. We are not aiming for perfection. Allah wants to see if we can admit our mistakes and we can try our best to implement the ayahs that we can. And we are also admitting that Allah knows what is in our hearts. and that it is at the mercy of Allah that He will pardon us. We have a lot to think about in terms of the status of our heart. And there is a lot of things in our minds, in our hearts, that Allah knows about and we feel guilty about too. And it is only at the mercy of Allah that He is going to pardon us from those thoughts and those desires. The next ayah, verse 285, Allah is telling us to believe in the commands of the divine law that was given to the Prophet ﷺ and his companions. And he is also adding to this that the Muslim Ummah does not differentiate between the prophets. So I want to just say a few words about this, because Allah has sent us prophets. Yes, there are 25 named prophets in the Quran. Allah has told us stories about them. And in the eyes of Allah, these prophets do have different ranks. And this is only by the hikmah of Allah, by the wisdom of Allah, and only Allah knows about these ranks. But for us, as a Muslim Ummah, we need to believe in all of them as they were messengers of Allah and had great status. So Allah knows about these ranks. We do not know about these ranks. But as a responsibility, we need to respect the word of these prophets. We need to respect what they were saying. We need to respect and believe that they were delivered. The word that was delivered to them was the divine word of Allah. What's interesting is that the Bani Israel did not do this. They did not accept the Prophet ﷺ as their final messenger. And they preferred one prophet over the other. And they killed prophets as well. So this is why Allah is giving us the order not to differentiate between the prophets, because they are, from our perspective, they are all messengers of Allah and had a great status. The next thing that Allah is telling us is that we need to say, we hear and we obey. What did the Bani Israel say when they were given the scripture? They said the exact opposite. They said, we hear and we disobey. So now the command is, we submit and we say we hear and we obey. We do not act like the Bani Israel. All these things that Allah is telling us, He is saying to us, do not act like Bani Israel. He is advising us to do exactly what the Bani Israel should have done. And finally, in the last verse of Surah Baqarah, Allah, as the last nation, us, as the moderate nation, have been advised as a few things that I'm going to show you on the screen, inshallah. We need to believe that when Allah is testing someone with something, only Allah knows why they are being tested and the capacity of their test. So sometimes we see someone and they're going through something very difficult, and often we think, oh, why is this happening to this person? Oh, we feel so sorry for them. Oh, why is this, why is Allah doing this? We need to remember that Allah does not burden any human more than what it can bear. And we need to believe that when Allah is testing someone, only Allah knows why they're being tested. Because none of us knows the capacity of each other. You don't know you don't know the capacity which Allah can test me, and I do not know the capacity which Allah can test you, because we do not know what you can bear. Only Allah knows how much we can bear. And therefore we are in no position to question this. And as a result of that, everyone will suffer the consequences of their bad deeds and enjoy the virtues of their good deeds. And subhanAllah, again, Allah is making contingency plans for us. He's saying that there is no punishment with genuine forgetfulness and oversight. Let's relate this back to Bani Israel. Bani Israel were purposely forgetting, and they were continuously making the same mistake, saying, yeah, Allah will forgive us, Allah will forgive us, Allah will forgive us. Allah forgave them, and then they thought they were entitled. But here Allah is saying there is no punishment if you genuinely forgot, and it's okay to make mistakes. And we should keep making dua that we are saved from these trials that we cannot bear. Now, when we ask Allah and we submit ourselves to Allah, that He should be accepted as the helper and protector. SubhanAllah, the symmetry of the Quran always amazes me. In Surah Fatiha, what did we say? In Surah Fatiha, we said, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. We entrusted Allah with all our affairs, correct? In Surah Fatiha, we asked Him, and we told Allah that we completely rely on You, we are completely trusting You with everything. And now we are coming back to this idea that Allah is our only protector and helper. So we started the Quran off with the idea and with the mindset that Allah is our protector and our helper, and only He can guide us to the straight path. And now we are coming back to this idea at the end of Surah Baqarah, where now, after learning about all these commandments, all these laws, all these stories about Bani Israel and Talut and all these examples, only we put our complete trust in Allah, because Allah is the only one who can help us and protect us. And therefore we are making dua to Allah that He does not hold us to account to our mistakes. So after everything, despite everything, this huge responsibility, we are going to try and enter into Islam completely and wholly, and we are going to try and implement it to the best of our abilities. But ultimately, without Allah's guidance and without Allah's help and protection, this will not be possible. So you can see that Surah Baqarah has literally done a 360 on itself. We started off with Allah's guidance. In fact, in Surah Fatiha, we asked for Allah's guidance. Ihdina siratal mustaqim. Allah gave us more than guidance. Allah showed. He gave us the knowledge that we needed, therefore the commandments. He gave us the direction, so the knowledge, all the knowledge that we have been given about the examples, the Bani Israel, etc. And He told us what the consequences will be upon being granted success. So we will suffer the consequences of our bad deeds and enjoy the virtues of our good deeds. So where does this link to leadership? So our link to leadership is such that us as the last ummah should have a very strong relationship with Allah and the Quran, and it should be followed, and we should follow the last divine law sincerely to the best of our ability, so that we can prove to Allah that we are superior in knowledge, in success, and in direction to the Jews and Christians who were then the moderate nation, but now we are proving ourselves as the moderate nation. So if you want to sum up Surah Baqarah in one sentence, Allah has given us the weight of responsibility in this surah. That's what He has done. And now the surahs to come will build on this responsibility. He will be telling us more about what we need to do in order to establish ourselves as a leader, as of the nation, and what we need to do, what more laws we need to follow to ensure that we implement this, the divine word of Allah. So, what is our ayah of the day today then? And I've chosen this ayah of the day because it really encapsulates everything that we have done in Surah Fatiha and Surah Baqarah. يا أيها الذين آمنوا ادخلوا في السلم كافة ولا تتبعوا خطوات الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين. All you have believed, enter into the fold of Islam completely and do not follow the footsteps of Shaitan. Indeed, he is to you a clear enemy. And this is what we need to reflect on. The questions that we need to be asking ourselves are that, do we enter into the fold of Islam completely? Do we admit that there are things in the Quran that we cannot implement, but we will try our best? And dear sisters and dear families, this is the hardest thing to accept. Because immediately when you read something that you do not like and that is not in your favor, you immediately think, I don't want to do it. But that is the attitude that Allah does not like. Because that is what Shaitan is telling us. And that's what Allah is saying, do not follow in the footsteps of the Shaitan. So we really need to think, are we really, do we take this responsibility seriously? Do we at all take this responsibility seriously? Do we understand the weight of this responsibility? Both in our communities and in our households? Do we try to encourage the good and forbid what is not good? Are we doing things that the Bani Israel used to do, or are we doing things that Allah is telling us to do? And I think personally that is the most scariest thing of all, because we have learned so much about Bani Israel, and in my heart I'm just thinking, is Allah considering me like someone for Bani Israel? And slowly, what we will begin to realize is that in our actions and in our words, you might begin to start seeing parallels between us and Bani Israel. And that is our point of reflection. Are we entering into the fold of Islam completely? I'm going to leave that there, inshallah, and inshallah, that is something to ponder upon. If I know where, again, alhamdulillah, we're good for time, but I want to go back to something that I did not elaborate on this in this session. And it was mentioned, let me bring the slide up, inshallah. If you just go back to some of the things, here we are. Something that I just found, a very nice example. I'm sharing this because I just found this very, very beautiful. Okay? And Allah in ayahs 250 and 260, Allah talks about this again. This is not really related to jihad in any way. It's just Allah again is kind of having this interlude period. He's talking about examples of life after death, because as part of our belief, we need to believe in life after death as well. So I didn't mention this initially because we were in the flow of jihad and the commandments, but this is why, alhamdulillah, we have time, so Allah has given me the opportunity to talk about this. And the three examples of life after death that Allah talks about, there's three stories that Allah talks about here. And the first story is about Ibrahim alayhi salam and the king. And Ibrahim alayhi salam confronts the king of his time, and he says, he's giving the message of Allah, and the king is not, he's having a discussion with him, rather like a debate with him. And Ibrahim alayhi salam says, my Lord is one who gives life and gives death. And the king says, no, my Lord, I am the one who gives life and gives death, because he perceived himself as a king, as God. And then Ibrahim alayhi salam beautifully replied to him, saying, well, if my Lord causes the sun to rise from the east, will you then cause the sun to rise from the west? So what is the purpose of this story? The purpose of this story is not to, yes, it is to prove that there is Allah and the signs of Allah, yes. But this is a point of reflection. The king here in the Quran, in this specific ayah, Allah, the Arabic that is used is very interesting because with the king, he actually pauses. He pauses to think about this. And immediately, he refutes the idea. However, he pauses to think about this. And this is the impact we need to have in our society. We're not asking people to immediately turn away or to accept Islam. We want to give people the element of thought. We want to let them ponder. The king here, he also paused and he thought. For a split second, albeit just for a minute. But he was speechless. And that speechless defines thought. It was his own ego and arrogance that forbade him from believing in Ibrahim alayhi salam's message. But when we were talking about understanding and doing maybe a seminar or delving a bit more deeper into Sharia law, that is the purpose. We are not sent on this nation to make every single person on earth a Muslim. That is not the purpose. Allah is the one who gives guidance. But our purpose here is to make people think, to give them that element of thought that, oh, I didn't think of that. The second example Allah uses is a man who asked Allah to show to him how he raises people from the dead. So what Allah did was, he made this person die. Allah gave death to this person for 100 years. And then he brought him back to life. And when he brought him back to life, his food, this man's food, was in exactly the same condition as he left it. However, the donkey that he was with had been reduced to bones. And in front of this man, Allah brought the donkey back to life. So and that again, the man that asked Allah to give him this sign, or you could say this miracle, or he had this question, he asked Allah to show him how he gives life and how he gives life to a person of death or something of death. Again, this is a moment to think about. The man, he was a believer, and this made him even more convicted of his belief. Remember, we spoke about the ayahs that can go two ways. They can either increase Iman or they can reduce Iman. This made his Iman more convicted. He was more convicted of his Iman because he saw that. Again, this element of thought that yes, Allah is true. It's this thought-provoking nature. That's why Allah has brought these examples in this place, because He's asking us as the leader of the nation to be thought-provoking. And finally, another beautiful example of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Ibrahim alayhi salam also had the question about giving life after death. And Allah told him to slaughter a bird and split it into 4 equal parts. And put each of these parts on a separate mountain or a separate hill. And then call these birds and watch how they come back to Ibrahim alayhi salam. And that's what happened. He split the bird into 4 equal parts, he called the birds, and they all came back to him. So the lesson we can learn from these little interludes in the Quran is that, firstly, to be thought-provoking. Secondly, to be convicted of Allah's superiority, authority, and His sovereignty. And the third, that we use these examples to be more convicted in our belief of Allah. So I just wanted to share that with you. Alhamdulillah, like I said, I had the time to do that. And I'm glad I could share that with you because these are 3 beautiful, beautiful examples in the Quran where Allah really encapsulates what it means to be convicted in faith and what it means to be thought-provoking. But inshallah, I think I will stop there. Jazakallah khair for listening. Jazakallah khair for sticking with us, for writing notes, for being with us on this journey. May Allah accept it from all of us. Every good that I have said is from Allah, and all that I have said which may be wrong is from myself. May Allah guide us, protect us. May Allah help us implement. May Allah help us implement the laws that we have learned in Surah Baqarah in our daily lives. May Allah help us implement and enter the fold of Islam completely and wholly. Inshallah, tomorrow you'll be doing Surah Al-Imran, and you're going to be exploring the connections between these two surahs, inshallah. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
MashaAllah, and Ameen to all your beautiful du'as. Excellent session, really. I really enjoyed it. Your time management is excellent as well. For a minute, I thought your